promise you his name wasn't Jesus. Nobody called him Jesus. That wasn't his name.
All right, let's see it.
So if his name wasn't Jesus then, why is it Jesus now?
So Ken Arrington has a wonderful video discussing how the pronunciation changed through history and why. I highly recommend checking out that video. And in this response, I am going to add one or two things regarding how Jesus' name was likely pronounced in and around the Galilee in the 1st century CE.
Did we decide to give him a nickname? Is it like when a Chinese guy comes from, China over to here, we just call him Bob? Why? Well, because someone said, dude, I can't say so I'm just going to say, you're Dave.
So that's racist and also pretty ignorant. I can't speak for everyone. I imagine it does happen from time to time, and there are going to be many people out there who know much better than me. But everyone I have ever known who has come to the U.S. from an Asian nation and has adopted a more Americanized name than the one they were given has chosen that name themselves with much thought and care. It has not just been arbitrarily assigned to them by some brosif like this was Ellis Island. But that's not what's going on with Jesus' name. That is not a native Greek name that was just arbitrarily imposed upon Jesus. It is a transliteration, and it existed prior to Jesus. In fact, it goes all the way back to the translation of the Hebrew Bible into Greek between the 3rd and 2nd centuries BCE. So that Aramaic name had that Greek equivalent in circulation well before Jesus was ever born. Now, a transliteration is where you take a word or a name, its pronunciation in a given language, and then you try to reproduce as close as you can that pronunciation in the letters, the characters, the alphabet of a target language. And it very rarely corresponds exactly, because there are frequently pronunciations and characters and things that do not have exact correspondences in the target language. And even when you do have two languages that share the same script, you have differences in pronunciation. For instance, when I go to South America, I don't introduce myself as Daniel. I introduce myself as Daniel, because that's how that name is pronounced in most of the places that I go. Now, if I wanted to elevate myself to a Brad Lee level of brainless pedantry, I could say that's not my name. But that would be a really dick move, because everybody knows that names are pronounced differently in different languages, and everyone knows that most people are just trying to do their best. Now, I'm going to recommend going over to Ken's video for more information on how it went from Aramaic to Greek to Latin to English, and then how the spelling of the English changed. But what I'm going to add is that based on the scholarship today, Jesus' name in Galilean Aramaic was probably pronounced Yeshu or Yeshu, without that little furtive patak accompanying the ayin at the end. There are some texts that indicate that Galileans were sometimes mocked for dropping that little furtive patak, and that may account for why there is no a at the end of Jesus in the Greek, because it may not have been pronounced. There's still debate about that, but I would say that's probably the best scholarly reconstruction of how someone who knew Jesus, or how Jesus himself would have pronounced his name.
You're Bob. Okay? I'm going to call you something I can pronounce. So that's what they did with Yahshua. That's what they did. They said, we're just going to call you Iesus.
Also not the way the Greek or the Latin was pronounced.
And so Iesus became Jesus. But his name wasn't Iesus either. That's Bob. That's what they just decided to call him. They changed his name. His name was Yahshua.
So Jesus' name was definitely not pronounced Yahshua. That's just somebody who thinks, oh, well, it's Joshua, but there's no J, so I'll just replace that with a Y, and now I'm on to something. But it absolutely was not Yahshua.
It didn't translate to Iesus. His name was Yahshua. That didn't translate to the language they were trying to. So they made up a word that would get people to understand. Well, that word is Iesus, which is why we say Jesus now. But his name was not Jesus. His name was Yahshua.
No, it wasn't.